So we just watched the majority of year 5 for Myles Turner. We'll have to see how he looks once we've got basketball back, but the conversation that we've had for years now about him, I feel like we can still kind of have, where we're waiting. He is good, and he's on a good contract, $18 million a year for a center who I don't think has hit his ceiling yet. But we're still talking about, can he keep getting better? Has he reached his tipping point as a player? All this type of stuff, right? Myles, he still remains in this kind of awkward spot where he doesn't shoot that many free throws, and we can argue that's because he's not forceful enough on offense. Maybe he's simply not talented enough, as a post-up player or whatever, but you think he can just simply be more physical to get more rebounds, or more offensive rebounds, which in turn could lead to more free throws, or just aggressiveness overall around the basket, we would guess. But now that Sabonis, in a way, is like the center on offense, he's taking more shots and more post-ups and stuff like that. There's a chance that Myles is never going to be a big free throw guy, which isn't the end of the world, but it does make it a little tougher for him to be a real plus offensively. Now the next thing to talk about is the threes, because we have been waiting for Myles to shoot more threes, and he actually attempted more threes this year. He got up to almost 4.5 threes a game, and just looking at him attempt threes a little bit this year, there's a lot of times where he goes up with it really quickly, like even if there's a defender kind of near him, or he's in transition, as in like he's coming up behind a fast break or whatever, he'll pull up right away with it. So these are all good signs. I mean, he shot 34%. It's not amazing. So I think there's still some improvement to be had from 3-4 Myles, but I feel like it's all kind of going in the right direction. And yeah, it might be a little awkward right now, but I think he and the Pacers will be better off if he just keeps doing it. If we look at his shot percentages, as in where he was taking them. So last year, he attempted about 35% of his shots from 10 feet to long two-point range. This year, that's down to 20%, and he's trading in a lot of those shots for more threes. So again, like it's what you want him to be doing. He's not amazing at it right now, but we hope he can get there. In terms of other things with his offense, you'd think that the shooting would allow him to be a little better of a passer, or if anything, the Pacers could just use like more handoff plays with him at the top of the key, and I think they've done that a little bit. I think there's more room for creativity there. Whether Nate McMillan is the coach for that, I don't know. But I do think there's some potential. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if you have a center who needs to be respected from outside, then you can also run handoff plays with that guy and get your ball handlers going to the basket or whatever. Now, granted, because Sabonis is always kind of lingering around the paint, although even then he has done some spotting up this year, but he is around the paint, so that's always going to be a thing for Indiana. But I don't want to focus mainly on the Turner-Sabonis thing because I've talked about that enough. But they have made it work. Lineup data is all pretty good with those two. Another thing to talk about with Myles is rebounding, because I don't think he's ever going to be an awesome rebounder. I mean, the most he's ever averaged is about 7 a game. That being said, when Myles is in the game, the Pacers are around the 6th or 7th best defensive rebounding team in the league. Granted, it's all decimal points, so it's all like a big grouping of teams. But when he's not in there, they're the worst defensive rebounding team in the league, so that's still important. I have seen a little bit of that where it's like, well, why doesn't Myles Turner grab more rebounds? And it's like, well, the team is grabbing the rebounds when he's in the game, and that's what really matters. Now, could you argue that because he doesn't grab a crap ton of rebounds, that it could be a sign of him at times not taking the game over, I guess? I think mainly on the offensive glass. Like I mentioned earlier, I think he could stand to maybe get up to like 2 or 3 offensive rebounds a game. As for the defensive glass, I mean, to me, he just always does the right thing defensively, which means that sometimes you're not going to be in position to get the rebound, but if you're making the other team miss, then that's better, if you ask me. I guess one criticism you could throw at Myles is that he does have a tendency to just kind of sink into the game rather than just kind of do something off the wall, I guess. Whether it's like super sprinting on a fast break or attacking the glass like Tristan Thompson or something, or whatever else. You know, he just kind of flows within the game, and he just does kind of what the game plan asks him to do, which is fine. But if you're going to do that, then you've got to be really, really good at all that stuff. And up to this point, he's really good at some of it. I mean, he's still one of the better rim protectors in the league, and the only reason why he doesn't have multiple all-defense appearances is because they only allow 2 centers to get there. But even so, it would just be cool if occasionally we would see Myles Turner just kind of force himself into the game a little bit more. Like, I feel like we kind of criticized Gobert a little bit for that this season, and, you know, occasionally Myles may do that. Now, I think there's some other little things with Myles that are interesting, some positive, some negative. He does have a bit of a handle. Like, if you really dive into some of his highlights, you can find moments of him beating some dudes off the dribble. There's even occasional times where he'll pop off of a screen and then he'll drive to the basket instead of just shoot the three-pointer. And I think that's kind of interesting. Could it be something that he can really flesh out? I mean, I don't know. A lot of it depends on your freedom as a player, and I feel like it's also a matter of, well, how many times are we really going to give you that so you can work on it? It's like, I don't think it's the same as his threes. Like, I think Myles' outside shot is more essential than his ability to beat somebody off the dribble once every 2 games. But I think it's an interesting little thing nonetheless, and perhaps it could suggest that he's got more potential as a half-court scorer. I mean, his post-ups, there's not a lot of them. When he does bust out some sort of a hook shot or whatever, it doesn't look horrible, even if it doesn't always look the most natural. I do remember it was like a couple years ago, I feel like Myles said something about how he wanted to work on his post game, and then the NBA just kind of flipped on him overnight, whereas now we're asking him to shoot threes, so I guess it makes sense that it's taken him a little while to really embrace it. But the point that I'm making is, I don't know if he's ever going to be like Sabonis in terms of creating offense like that, not only because of the posting up and stuff, but also, I mentioned earlier, the passing. Like, Myles, you know, if he was going to make a jump as a passer, he certainly hasn't shown any signs of it yet. His turnover percentage has been higher than his assist percentage for his entire career. I think I mentioned him setting screens like a minute ago. Could Myles be a better screen setter? Yeah, potentially. I mean, to be fair, NBA bigs set 1 million screens a game, so I understand if not every single one is awesome, but there does seem to be a few times where he does the thing where he sets the screen, but he's really just kind of there. You know, he's not exactly blocking off the defender all the time. But I do think that matters, because with Myles especially, like, if you're not going to be the big-time box score guy, then you just got to be really good at all the stuff that doesn't show up in the stats, you know? Like, you got to be the screen setter. I mean, defensively, he's already there. We give him that one. But also, you know, just being more of a threat from outside. Like, that to me is the real avenue for Myles. It's if you're going to be an awesome screen setter and teams really need to respect you from 3, and if you can get a little better as a passer, then I feel like his offensive game can really take off. Now, in terms of points per game, I mean, you know, he might just cap out at 15 points, and that can still be fine, assuming that you are good at stuff, you know? The people who know basketball will respect Myles Turner's game, even if he's not averaging a crap ton of points or getting a crap ton of rebounds. I mean, I've held off on this comparison until 9 minutes. The avenue for him to be an awesome center is to be Al Horford, basically. Now, whether the passing is ever going to be there, I don't know. But the other stuff can certainly be there. And defensively, he's definitely already there. So, yeah. I mean, can I understand maybe being a little disappointed in Myles Turner up to this point? Sure, but that doesn't mean that he's not good. That doesn't mean he's not still improving, and I feel like he can still be pretty damn awesome for the Pacers. And I think I mentioned it earlier. His contract is still solid. I mean, it's not a super bargain for a center. He is making $18 million a year. But he's also making that until like 2023. So while, we don't know what the cap is going to do in a year or whatever, we can imagine it's going to bounce back up by that point. And even then, to be fair, I don't think the Indiana Pacers foresaw the salary cap potentially being knocked down quite a bit after the NBA was suspended in the middle of the year. So, yeah. Basically what I'm getting at is, even if Turner never super takes off, I feel like he's always going to be a positive asset for these guys. I do know that he's been in more than his fair share of imaginary trades on the internet. I don't think the Pacers should move him. I feel like he is pretty essential to what they're doing. I think even if they've held up defensively with Sabonis in the game and without Myles, I don't think they would sustain that if Myles wasn't on the team at all. I feel like eventually that would catch up with them. So anyway, yeah, that's Myles Turner for you.